Can't hear. That's why she's not responding to us. Commissioner Hazel, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, and we can hear you so loud.
There she is.
Okay. No, she was gone. You didn't know she was what? Gone? I could hear you.
And we have ex officio Mayor Aaron Flood with us as well.
Was unable to make it.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get started, I wanted to make a little statement. I want to just talk a little bit about that now I've been chair for, this is my 7th meeting. I counted 7 meetings. And I realize that I can do better. I feel like there are some things I have to learn. And I'd like to start this evening with a goal. And so as a chair, I'd like to increase my knowledge and my use of Robert's rules. So, so I want to run the meetings that are organized, respectful, and efficient, where everyone has an opportunity to be heard and to use their time well. So some of the things that in reviewing Robert's rules, I just want to put out there. I'm not saying that we're not doing this, but I think it's just a reminder. So my goal is to also to ensure the commissioners, staff, applicants, and the members of the public all feel respected. So I want to remind everyone to raise your hand when you want to speak and to wait for me to acknowledge you to speak. My goal is also to listen, and I ask that you not direct your comments or thoughts to staff or each other, direct them to me. And please be careful not to repeat what others have already expressed. And so I will appreciate your patience as I become more familiar with these rules. And I know some of you know these rules really well. So I would really appreciate your support in keeping the meeting running as efficiently as we can. So thank you. Just want to acknowledge that I have some learning to do and want to moving forward. I want to like incorporate that better. I think Commissioner Volkart has his hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question for you. Is it from Robert's rules where you're suggesting that commissioners don't communicate with each other and only to the chair?
And that's more of being, I meant that more as respectfully. If we do are speaking directly to commissioner, let's make sure we're being respectful. But and even with staff, I think it's really important that we just be mindful of how we're expressing it.
So you mean if we're disrespectful, you want us to direct it to you?
Yeah, yes. All your disrespect to me, I'll take it.
Okay.
Commissioner Riley.
So you said 3 things and I got 1 and 2, but not 3.
I said, okay.
I got, okay, raise your hand, address the chair. What was the?
And then to direct your try not to direct your comments directly to staff, just if you can, direct them to me. That was
And not repeat what.
And now, yes, thank you. And to please, now, but if someone's already said it, I think we've got the message. Let's, hear your thought. Usually Davis, did you hear the
No.
Okay, great. All right, with that, let's begin our agenda. So announcements by staff.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I point of information?
Yeah, Commissioner Volkart.
I just, did you check for agenda, consent on agenda or?
I did not, and I wish we would add that to it because I forget every time. And I know it's not in our bylaws with that, so it's difficult for me to remember. So thank you.
I understand that, yeah.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Great. With that, we'll move on to group announcements.
Alrighty. Commissioners, on the table, unfortunately did not make it to the packet and I greatly apologize. It is a department update, just a high level what the department has been doing in the last month. But want to make sure you all get a chance to see that. Again, it's very high level.
Thank you. And then one of the comments I wanted to make, Oregon Senate Bill 974 of 2025 took effect July 1st. And that Senate bill mandates an expedited administrative framework for qualifying housing developments, residential zone changes, variances, planning developments,
and planning developments inside the UGB. Senate Bill 974 explicitly shifts the review from quasi judicial process to an administrative staff level decision, making this process more akin to a limited land use decision. Excuse me. Certain applications reviewed under the type 2 administrative procedures where the community development director or designee serves as a local final authority and a public hearing is neither required nor permitted for the initial determination. Legislative intent of this change is to reduce structural barriers, shorten the standard review timeline. Historically, the timeline was 11 to 12 weeks. This here should bring it down to about 6 to 7 weeks. And this is also intended to accelerate the production of housing units. Some of the changes that came with 974 and took effect July 1st was a notice radius for anything fewer than 20 residential units. The mailing radius is now 100 feet. And note for developments 20 or more, the standard 500-foot radius still applies. Our comment window has changed a little for surrounding property owners within the statutory radius. Are provided the mandatory 14-day written comment period to submit evidence regarding the clear and objective compliance. And a note, before I came along, policy was set that we've extended that 14-day a bit due to the fact that our mail goes from here to Portland and back. So we also add in a couple of days extra for that as well. Newspaper publications, because this application is processed administratively rather than a type 3 public hearing, traditional broad circulation newspaper publications are bypassed for this type of review. We just want to note under the operational terms of 974 and related state housing statutes, the right to appeal this administrative land use decision is legally constrained. The general public nor applicant parties and surrounding neighbors who submit written comments do not possess standing to file a local appeal of the final administrative order. Standing to appeal this residential development decision at both the local level and subsequent LUBA appeals is strictly restricted to the applicants. So those changes took effect. And one of the things you will note on your list of what we did last month is a variance that shouldn't be on it because the variance actually took place more recently. But yes, we have already had a variance. It's in the process of the 14-day period. It is housing related that will not be going to you guys for decision, nor will it have a public hearing per 974.
Commissioner.
If possible, I would really appreciate a written version of what was just reported and yes,
Yes.
if we could get that before the next packet, maybe by email, would that be okay?
Yes, and we could ask them to do that. And really helpful to have that in writing and maybe some comment and have that. Just if we had that.
We will do. Yes, no, not a problem.
Commissioner Wilson.
Did I may have misunderstood. Did I hear you say this will accelerate the reduction of housing units?
That's its intent, is to make housing to accelerate
Yeah, the production.
production. Sorry.
Production, okay.
I could see how-
Thank
I-
you. Production, thank you. And so, and it was an administrative framework for, what was the title that you said, for housing? I didn't quite catch it all.
I don't recall giving it a
I can look it up too.
title, but the qualified housing developments, such as residential zone change variance and planning developments under 20 units is, I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, so everything that was type 3 for 20 units goes to type 2 then.
Correct.
So all variances,
Right, so
so commercial variances as well.
no, commercial variants will stay the same. This is for residential
Okay,
only.
okay, yeah, I'll look it up. Take a look at what comes out later.
Yeah.
I
start talking about field. So that to me like, they're the only person who they have to apply directly to the city handles the permitting process, and the only possible field can happen from the applicant, not from the city council, not from the planning commission, no one, not from. Yeah.
Yeah, non-applicant parties and surrounding neighbors who submit written comments do not possess standing. That's my understanding of the Senate bill.
I think I would be interested to know from the city manager, and I'd be happy to run a question through the sheriff. From the city manager of the attorney is that, what, if there is any recourse for the city, elected officials or something officials, in the case that there might be a wrong decision with the statute.
Understood.
But there might be a wrong decision if there's any other recourse. And it sounds to me like there's not, but, obviously, employment is the only recourse, seemingly the only recourse. It seems to me that there should be something between that, the extreme decision.
So you,
Do you understand what I'm asking?
I think I'm not, so.
I think I do.
Okay.
And if I understand it correctly, you're looking for a comment from city manager and or city attorney regarding appeals to ensure that the only appeal of a person is
The only person.
was
The only person with standing that the person will.
Yeah.
Then is there any other report if there's a erroneous decision? Okay,
what, yeah, so
yeah, that's really all. Yeah,
no problem.
thank you.
Thank you, thanks for clarifying. It's hard because it was very hard to follow, and so when you asked the question, I felt a little lost.
And I am word salad sister.
Yeah. Commissioner Polk.
For clarity purposes, is this when you would like us to direct our question, like what I just directed to Rick, you would prefer?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure. This is part.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Any other updates?
No, that was all I had.
All right, let's go to the minutes. Everyone had a chance to read them. I was impressed in how concise they were. And how you were able to summarize everything.
Well, I do use AI as assistant, so I can't take too much credit for that.
You know, sometimes that AI would help. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? Commissioner, Mr. George.
I'm only gonna say this one time. It's going to take me to the end of my life to get used to staff used as a plural. I'm trying,
I didn't catch all that. Staff is what?
used as a plural,
Oh,
but
Really?
trying to,
Wow.
What is that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
staff used as a plural.
Staff?
Because I would say members of staff or staff members to make it a plural, and staff I would see as a singular. But-
Um,
That's not what we're doing. So there we,
Yeah, I use staff as plural.
Same.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I still put two spaces behind the period and I.
I do too.
I did too.
Stop
I did
using
too.
it.
Right.
Okay, any other comments on there, and will someone like to entertain a motion? Commissioner Volkart.
I move approval of the June 23rd of 2026 regular meeting minutes.
There a second?
second.
Any discussion? Still roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Hazel,
I abstain. I wasn't there.
Commissioner Volkart,
Yes.
Chair D'Amato.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shapiro,
Yes.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Abstain.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes. Motion carries. So yes.
Thank you.
You do have a,
So are there any, does anybody put in for, I think any public hearing, so there are no public comments and no public hearing. We are going to move into our discussion. So first one is code enforcement discussion. And I believe, we proceed to talk about.
yes, we have our city manager here to lead the conversation.
Here to bottom, members of the commission, it's good to be here. I want to start with just a couple preliminaries and one is, the first is to acknowledge that we do have at least one outstanding code enforcement issue that I think both Rick and I would agree has lingered for too long. And I would also, like to remind folks that you are welcome to bring concerns about outstanding code enforcement issues that you are seeing lingering too long to me. I think our concern has been primarily about not wanting to have those discussions in public sessions. So please do feel free to bring concerns about those kinds of concerns to me. And then I do want to share a couple other things that I hope don't sound defensive, but are just intended to let you know that while I would acknowledge that there are some code enforcement issues that we have not, handled as I wish we had, I do take code enforcement quite seriously. We've cited several folks over the past year, and my understanding is we had gone a few years without citing any individuals. I also worked with the attorney with our city attorney and council to put a chronic nuisance ordinance in place at council's request and request from the public. And we are using the direct abatement powers of the city. We just may have been a week and a half ago now, the public works crew went to a property that is largely abandoned and cleaned up some leaves and other debris because the fire department had noted it as a significant fire danger. So all that to say is I would acknowledge there are concerns about the way we're pursuing things, but I do also want to let you know that there are, I take it seriously, and there are places where we've been more active than the city has been in the past, to my understanding. And then I also like to just note that I think there's a pretty healthy tension between staff and appointed and elected officials around this kind of issue. The elected and appointed officials often have more knowledge of the history, better understanding of the culture of the community, the expectations of the community. And staff have more knowledge of the sort of intricacies and the technical details often, right? I'm drawing broad strokes with both of those statements. And I also, similarly, I think there are different incentives and perspective often is shaped by where one sits, right? And by that, I mean, staff are obligated and do think more about the legal risk of the city. I think also as human beings, staff are also the people who deliver the bad news. And I would hope that that doesn't influence us, but I think inevitably it does, and not always in a negative way, right? There's a cold application of bureaucratic rules that it sometimes is appropriate, but I think anyway, the person who delivers the bad news, I think, does tend to look for more ways to soften that than if you're not in the room. And ultimately, we are all human beings, and I think shaped by I think both our roles that we're playing, and also why we chose to take those roles. I mean, the individuals who tend to want to join planning commission, I would assume are generally there to protect a lot of the values that they see encompassed in city rules and city regulations. Whereas, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I come from an economic development background that is, often, right? I wouldn't say contrary to that, but it's a different focus. So I just wanted to sort of air all those things that I think we do come to this conversation from slightly different places, but I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it can be really productive. So getting more into the meat, I wanted to explain why staff is not recommending having hard and fast rules about time limits. And I think, and there are two primary things I want to say. And the first is, I'll talk a little bit about the AN 81 case. So the truck stop case where we had a lot of unpermitted work that took place. It was a situation where there's very clear code violation, in my mind, a very serious code violation. And we had there were a lot of challenges in bringing it to solution. And it didn't happen as quickly as I wanted. And it took an enormous amount of staff time. But ultimately, we got a resolution that kept the city out of court. And to me, that was one of the primary things that I was concerned about. And if I had been limited and forced at X moment to cite those folks or take other actions, I think it's certainly possible that we couldn't have ultimately found a negotiated outcome. A negotiated outcome, not just for the city, but also Freshwater Trust, whose mitigation site was severely impacted by this unpermitted work. And sort of a related factor, and sort of the second point that I was want to make is that the threat to cite is often much more powerful than a citation itself. Our judges tend to be extremely lenient and reluctant to throw the book at violators. And so citing somebody, having them go and get a slap on the wrist from the judge can often not actually help us as we are working towards getting compliant. So again, I think often it's much better to have the threat of the citation than to still in your quiver than it is to actually cite. So all those things being said, I serve at the pleasure of the council. They need to make these decisions. And I was struggling with, well, what are the levers that council could have or that we could offer to council? And so the idea that I came up with is I think somewhat varied in the policy, but what I suggested is that we establish a performance measure that we could regularly report to council. I would like to have performance measures for all of our departments. And so that's something I've been talking to my department heads about. And so just as a starting place to give you an example, this is something that Rick and Todd, our code enforcement officer, talked about, potentially having a target that all code complaints would be resolved, 75% of code complaints would be resolved within 45 days of the complaint coming in. And that would be something that we could report, regularly to council, and council could also give council, I think, an objective metric to evaluate the performance of code enforcement, and also a dial to turn, right? They could say, well, you're meeting that performance measure, but we're still hearing concerns from the community about the level of enforcement. And so we'd like it to be shorter, or we'd like to see a larger percentage complete resolved within that time period. And then I was planning to go next to just a quick review of the process that's laid out in the staff report. But I'd be happy to pause there or do that, whichever is the pleasure of the chair.
Are there,
I'm happy to go with the commission first.
oh, okay, Commissioner Rowland.
And we have a municipal court, Judge.
No, we
No,
do
we
not.
don't, we don't, good one.
Correct, but our cases go to, I'm blanking on the name of the court. It's a
Justice Court.
justice court. Thank you. And I think it's in Central Point.
You should vote.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, I appreciate much of this, like, especially, some level of discretion needed to avoid creating an impression of an overreaching and invasive city government that could lead to a backlash. I mean, I very much, often comparing with our neighbor cities, and it's like, I think it's great that talent isn't experiencing what Ashland has experienced and what, even on the smaller end, what Phoenix is experiencing right now. That said, a lot of the timeline, I understand the benefit of not setting one. You explained that well, but a lot of the timeline that I'm interested in seeing is for the complainant themselves, like somebody goes to the city and says, hey, I want to file a code compliance complaint. And then there's just no communication. And so I just wanted to, and I would have mentioned it later when we're looking at the specific language, because I only saw one, I think I saw one reference to a timeline with respect to the complainant, and
I'd like
just,
to respond to that. Commissioner Folker. If there was no violation, then they would communicate to the complainant. And not if there
Yeah,
was.
correct,
right?
yeah, you got
Sorry.
it, yeah, thank you, yeah, that's
Commissioner
exactly it,
Ryder.
yeah.
I had another question about the truck stop, that I thought I heard that it been settled, but there's still a ton of gravel up against the bank, and maybe that's not maybe this isn't the time to talk about that because it's so specific, but it doesn't look fixed to me.
So I'm not, as I sit here, 100% certain of whether all the work is complete. But there was a signed settlement between the property owner and the freshwater trust, under which the property owner agreed to pay a substantial amount of money to fund the restoration of the freshwater trust site. So, but yes, if there are more specific questions about that case, I think that it'd be best to just communicate those to me and I can share more information.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Volker. And because from what I've heard from the commissioners, I think that is one of the things that the lack of communication to the complainant. So if there's something that could be added into here, and I was glad when I saw it that if there is no violation, you would communicate with the complainant, but I didn't see anything in there. Like what's your next step? Would you communicate with the complainant? And maybe that's not appropriate, but it does feel like if someone's making a complaint, it'd be nice to say, we've gotten your complaint, whatever, just something to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a blind spot in the policy.
Commissioner Shapiro.
I'm curious, like, I'm not like, I understand trying to work things out before taking things further, but I'm not totally opposed to timelines. Because I think, things can just go on and on and on and on, and I don't know where we draw the line of trying to work it out, and it just keeps going on and there's no end. I mean, I would like to see a timeline. I'm curious, like, what other cities, what their timelines are. I don't know how many people don't comply and things have been going on and not being resolved. I'm not sure if that's a issue or problem. I know, so that's something I'm not opposed to, if things don't get resolved, like to have some kind of like leverage or something documented that like, okay, we've given you all this time, but you know, you need to have some kind of drop dead deadline. So the things that you have some backbone on enforcement as well, if it got to that point. And maybe things hopefully don't get to that point, but I like to have something in place if they did, personally.
So the policy isn't that we never set drop dead dates for compliance. What I'm suggesting is that you all not tell us exactly X situation, that date must be 75 days or 80 days or 90, whatever that time period is from whatever the triggering time is, because for the reasons stated in the report. So the only quibble I want to make with your statement or question was just to make very clear that we do set firm timelines and cite people if they violate them. I'm just asking that council not set a blanket deadline for compliance with a given type of violation.
Commissioner Goldberg. You're okay. Yeah.
One thing I think, and I don't want to dive in because I know you're gonna walk us through. One thing that I think is really helpful is for the compliance summary. I think it answers a lot of questions. Might be helpful if active code compliance issues have plus a clock running, for us to keep. And I hope that we get to see these at council as well and great report. I think it's great for transparency as well. And it demonstrates some of what we're doing, we're basically beneficial for this battle. The other thing, I wanted to just make a comment about something you said in the beginning, Alex, which was just reminding the commission and other officials that they could, presumably other officials, that they can come and talk to you about open active cases, that you don't want to talk about them on the public record, and then left it there. That could be perceived as really a discussion about a lack of transparency. And so I just want you to clarify, if you would please, that this is only in the event that there is a or confirm that this is only in the event you're only referring to active cases, cases that have open investigation and are not subject to public scrutiny at that point. And then there is one where public can review a record, and maybe you speak that there for the record, and I just want to have, but that gets clarified in the as well.
So to clarify, the each step of of an enforcement action is a public record, and the public could request that at any time. What I'm requesting, or not requesting, the policy that Rick and I have agreed upon is to discourage vehemently discussion in a public meeting of cases that are currently under investigation or currently under enforcement, because it may make it very difficult for us ultimately to enforce.
That leads me to a question, because I have understood, based on feedback from the city attorney at some point, that open investigations are not subject to discussion. So I guess my question is just having a better understanding of what that means. It's very likely that I'm very wrong, but I would like to know what the answer on that is.
Sure. I'm not totally sure what you're saying is inconsistent with what you've heard from the city attorney previously, but we'll certainly clarify.
Just that that an open investigation is subject to disclosure and discussion. My understanding is that if there's an open discussion, that it is not discussed. in chambers. And I'm not really sure what the difference would be discussed in behind in their office here. So I think just the implication is a lack of transparency there, and I would like to have a deeper understanding of what is public record. I mean, my understanding is that you could not get any information about an open investigation until it's closed, if you had it by government. That was what I understood. So just to clarify that.
But Commissioner Hazel's had her hand up. Commissioner Hazel, would you like to ask a question?
Hi, yeah. Actually, Alex answered the question that I had, but I did want to say that I can hardly hear Darby. I can hear everybody else perfectly clearly, but Darby sounds very like muffled, kind of underwater. And I don't know if it's your microphone or what, but I'm having a really hard time hearing you. So
Can you hear me now?
yes,
Sorry.
you sound good there. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, Alex already answered my question. Thanks.
You want her to repeat everything she just said?
I was just, I was really just asking
No.
a clarifying
No, it's
question.
okay.
And it'll be in the minutes, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Shapiro, I'm not too sure who was first, so I'm gonna go Commissioner Shapiro.
I just was under the impression that anything is public record.
I'm relatively confident that there are some things that are not public record, certainly in criminal investigations. I suspect there are likely things that are not subject to public record requests in civil investigations, but I think a citation, something like that, that's a formal document, I would be surprised that that's not subject to a public records request. But and I think if I understood the mayor's question, it's especially about the appropriateness of a private discussion between the city manager and a public official about an open investigation. I understood that to be part of the question as well.
Yeah, that was part of my question. And really my question was, my understanding was that it's all subject to public record once the investigation is closed, but that it wasn't subject to
I don't
public
think
record.
I don't think that's true.
That
I
the
don't think that's
investigation-
true, Darby.
My understanding was that the investigation was not subject to public record while it was open. And so while I'd love to take the advice from the commission, what I'm asking for is the advice from the attorney.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair request, and it would be great to get that answer in writing or included, updated in your.
yeah, and I could be wrong. I'll be the
finish
first, that's, I already
It's
said that.
important. I think it's a really important point that we all understand, because if we can't have any discussions, whether in private or in a meeting, then we all know that we can't be asking those questions in the meeting. So it'd be really important that we all understand.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shapiro. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Shapiro, are you finishing up on your comment before the meeting?
But following up on when this also, I had a friend that managed properties and got something from the code enforcement department from the city of Medford, which I forwarded. Everyone got a copy of that. And I was talking to her and she said all their things that they've cited people on are public record. Anybody can request, of course, you'd have to pay for it, and those were ongoing for those kind of, I don't know, I'm sure maybe it varies on the situation, but those are ongoing. You can get a public request and ask for pay for it if you have to.
I think it'd be great for us to get that.
Absolutely.
I mean,
That's okay. Yeah, thanks. And just maybe part of that, I'd be curious if, I would be surprised if we are privy to that information. But if it is the case, I would just be curious how you would go about avoiding serial quorum on that with the commission. So and that's it. I mean, if after commissioner filed into your office to discuss an ongoing investigation.
I would add one last thing, Madam Chair. It isn't my place to direct staff from the dais alone. So if anybody objects to getting a city opinion, whether that's the attorney or not, it really is up to up to the body to ask for that and not just me, so, or to object.
Any objections about asking Alex to follow up with the city attorney? I think it'd be really important and that we have it in writing so we all understand.
I mean, I feel like I don't know how many things really come to us that are ongoing violations. I mean, I think the thorn on our side has been for me personally, has been this squid
Yeah.
automotive, which I'm under the,
So if I could interrupt,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're about to say, of course, but there are a number of things you could say that would ultimately make it hard for us to make stick whatever we need to make stick. And that's the reason for the, Commissioner Riley, your look makes me, think that I wasn't clear. So, if, any kind of statement that appears prejudicial at this point in the process could be raised as an objection to a future commission decision about that case. So that's our concern.
okay, so I guess just for me, I don't think this is prejudicial. What? What? I just raised it. I'm sorry. Prejudicial is like, I'm just curious if they have applied for a type 3 conditional use permit. I think as a planning commissioner, I don't think that's prejudicial. I think it's just a question as a planning commissioner that I'm just asking if they've done that.
Sure, and I don't think, I think you could ask that. I don't think that's necessarily a question about an outstanding, although there is a code enforcement case going on. That question is not, in my mind, a question about the code enforcement case. I don't know exactly how and when we would answer that question about anybody at any time if you were to approach or to raise in a planning commission meeting, has X, well, a type 3 application would be something that I believe the staff would be happy to answer.
Exactly why we're asking you to get I feel like we really need the advice from the city attorney, so we're all clear on what could be asked and what could be answered and how much you can share. Because I feel like you are stumbling because you don't really know what you can say. We don't know what questions we can ask, and so I feel like maybe we should table this until we have more information on what we bring that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to table it. I'm sorry. I wanted to hear fully what you were getting to with if we're into the wrong application, how is that dealt with that? Right?
Sorry, I didn't
I mean,
understand your question.
if a conditional use permit is required for an applicant to be doing the use that they're engaged in the zone, and they haven't filed that application, then is that not coming up under a code compliance?
Point of order,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, the subject on the agenda is the code enforcement policy. And now we're getting into a specific code enforcement issue. And
I can unname it. I'll just,
or maybe you could hold it to.
until the discussion. That's what I intended to
Yeah.
do, but we're diving in.
So it would be just a matter of getting everybody back on track on and maybe,
I'll save my question
pause.
for the discussion.
yeah,
I was trying to table it so that we can, I
yeah.
feel like we don't have the right answer. So let's get back to the code enforcement, and Alex, I believe you're gonna walk us through this. Was that your next, what was your next step? I don't want to.
Yes, although I think Rick may be confident about the answer. Were you wanting to say something, Rick?
I did, but what I want to say sounds like I tabled for a minute. So I'll
Okay,
wait until
great.
that comes back around. I wanted to have
Cool.
just a quick conversation, 2 versus type 2, type 3, next, how they both apply here.
And Commissioner Volkart, just to, we'll clarify what is appropriate to discuss with staff, but just to clarify, what I was intending was if there are concerns about the city's sort of level of activity on code enforcement, that I want those concerns to come to me. I wasn't
Gotcha.
encouraging folks to come and express and talk about policy issues and how they should be dealt with, but rather than concerns being brought up, if somebody really feels they need to raise a concern, rather than that being brought up in a planning commission meeting, that I feel like there's some outlet needed, and that I was suggesting that myself be that outlet, but we will return and clarify, make sure that that's appropriate. So yes, my next thought was just to work through at a very high level what the code enforcement process that's laid out in the draft policy. And as I was thinking about what I was going to say, and I did realize in some ways there's a whole step here that's missing, I think appropriately, but when we're thinking about how we ensure compliance with the city code, first step in many cases is the development review process itself, and how the inspection prior to a certificate of occupancy and how that takes place. So I don't necessarily think that needs to be there or that we need to discuss it, but I just wanted to acknowledge that that's prior to this process and one of the first places in which that we need to catch issues and make sure that that the code is being followed. So the policy begins with how we select issues to investigate. And primarily the policy says that those would be complaint driven unless there is a question of public safety, really, public health or safety. And the first step is initial outreach and education. And if that appears to be resolving the issue, there's a subsequent verification that the issue's been resolved, but it would end there. If that initial outreach and education doesn't resolve the issue, our code calls for a first notice with a minimum time period to allow compliance, 15 days. And then our practice is to, unless again that there's an immediate unless there's an immediate danger, and the code allows us to move more quickly through many of these steps in cases where there is an immediate issue related to the health or safety. But standard practice would be to issue them a second notice to continue to encourage enforcement. If at times our practice, if we're seeing efforts towards compliance, but those efforts are still not successful within the time period that we've set as an expectation, we'll give them essentially a third notice, a courtesy warning. Hey, we're about to cite you. You haven't come into compliance, and then we move to and then at that point we may move to citation and or direct abatement of the issue. So that's again a very high level overview, but I'd welcome discussion and questions about it.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the practice. Is this outlined in? Are parts of this in our code, and or is this whole process outlined somewhere that the city department, the code enforcement department operates off of?
So it's all governed by Ordinance 928, which is on page 17 of the packet.
Okay.
And then what you have is of the policy that we set last summer, when I realized that we didn't really have a clear policy around a direct abatement specifically. So the reason that the policy that's signed on page 7 and dated August 26th exists is we recognize that we didn't really have clear steps. There's some things like our ordinance calls for, allows a protest, but we hadn't really defined how that protest would take place. And so then what follows that is a proposed revision to that policy. So we're currently operating under the policy that starts on page 7. And then as a response to the concerns that we've heard, we've recognized that we needed, some more clarity, particularly about the early steps. That is the proposed revision to that policy starting on page 12.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense to me. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Hazel has a question.
Yeah, so when I read through the packet, I've always wondered about the complaint-driven action. And I understand, especially being shorthanded at the city. However, I do think, it was mentioned in the packet that there could be retaliation, that the complaint could be retaliatory from one neighbor against another, possibly, but it also can work the opposite way. And it also might cause people to not file a complaint because they don't want their name on there to draw the ire of others. That's one thought that I had. But I also feel like that can work on, like the street I live on and stuff. But when it comes to the public thoroughfares, the 99 or Telet Avenue or Valley View, that if a city employee sees that there's something really out of line, I feel like it should be acted on. And I don't think that we should have to wait for a complaint for that, because it does reflect on our town. And that's just my feeling. I've always been curious about that, how there can be a real eyesore. And I'm not even thinking of anything in particular right now that's current. I'm thinking of an old situation, but I just don't see why we should have to wait for a complaint to be filed before there's any action on that. So I'm not talking about every single thing out there, but just in the main areas that really reflect on our city. I think it would behoove us to act on it, or at least put it, prioritize it.
Commissioner Hazel, I just want to clarify the first statement you made. What I think I heard, were you asking for that there be some option for an anonymous, to be an anonymous complainant?
Well, I mean, I did not say that, but that might be that might be helpful for some people. I'm just saying, in the packet, it said that one of the thoughts about why we wouldn't have just complaint-driven action is because that complainant might just be one neighbor that's lashing out at another, and it might not be grounded, and that's very possible too. But on the other hand, on the other side of that is that the person who might have a legitimate complaint doesn't want to have some retaliatory action by the person they're complaining about. So it's just a thought.
Well, I think that does I think the implication to me as well of that comment is a question about whether we accept anonymous complaints. And but to the second point, and this policy doesn't really speak to it, but the reason, as laid out in the staff report, that most cities in Oregon, I think the vast majority of cities in Oregon have settled on this process, is so that it's not staff discretion of what is an eyesore that reaches the level that requires enforcement. That one could empower staff to make that decision, but I think the fact that so many cities have ultimately settled on that, to me, that's the strong default.
A few things on this. First of all, we don't have, it seems to me that we have a limited amount of resources and time for code enforcement. And like on some of this, notice will be delivered by hand, like. That doesn't seem, when practical, it doesn't seem practical at all. It seems like even if you send something like, what is it? Registered, yeah, thank you. It just doesn't make sense where we send somebody out there to give them a citation or code.
So I can ask, can you give us a page in?
Yeah, page 7, it's the standard operating procedures to cite or initiate direct abatement. Number 1.
That's in the order.
in
And
the ordinance.
if I could focus the discussion on the
That's okay.
policy starting on page 12, because that's the proposed revisions.
So
And I,
on page 12,
yeah,
And the one on page 12 says delivered in person, if possible, or via mail or email. They added that. I don't think it was any other.
and
so
if,
You see it's on page 13.
Yep.
Number 2, Roman numeral 4.
where?
yeah, 2C.
So yeah, 2C, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here it is, delivered in person if possible. I don't know why we'd want to deliver something, pay somebody to go deliver a citation when we could just. I don't know, mail it.
So if I may, the rationale behind that is that each time you have an opportunity for a face-to-face discussion, you have, I believe, a better opportunity to get compliance and have a discussion with the person, understand why they may not be complying, why they may need 3 weeks, why they may have a broken leg. I mean, there are many reasons that this is a high touch process, and it's intentionally that way. There are certainly cases where we do use more mail notices, particularly around weed abatement because of the volume. And it's also sort of more well understood and kind of cut and dry, right? But when you're dealing with a site clearance issue, the code frankly is kind of hard to read and people often don't understand what's going on. And so anyway, that's the rationale, is that many of these things need more explanation.
Commissioner Shapiro, did you have another follow-up?
I don't know, I'm just concerned, like, the time, how much time these things take and how. Like, there's 3 different steps we can have. Do we have the resources to have this kind of ordinance for all these different steps and
Yeah.
power?
That's like the 3rd time in this discussion, I've heard like shorthanded, lack of resources. My understanding is community development and our code enforcement is fully staffed. Is that for the code enforcement? Yeah.
So yes,
We have a code enforcement officer where we used to have somebody in the police department doing it. Is that right? And is the police department still involved at all? I just want to know from a operational standpoint.
Yeah, so a few questions there. So, and before I move on, I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner Shapiro's point may be, if the phrase "if possible" might be too strong, right? You maybe if that it sort of implies in all cases where it is conceivably possible that we do it in person, and we might want to be more selective about that. And I wouldn't have any objection to that, because I think this does overstate, right? We don't do it in person anytime that's conceivably possible. Mayor, I believe you're correct that the code enforcement officer is a relatively new position within the last 8 years, 10 years, from my review of budgets.
Yeah, I think it's shorter
than
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is some police involvement, particularly when we're getting to the point of citation. So just because we do write citations pretty infrequently. I mean, it's, I think, a handful every 6 months. Often an officer actually writes the citation itself.
I just want to be careful that we're not mischaracterizing like these recommendations by way of a lack of resources. Like I want to make sure that the relationship that between these recommendations for new procedures or added procedures are being made in light of the fact that we have the resources to handle these.
That's correct. And
Recommendations.
the point about resources was more the question of, do we have the resources to go out street by street and look for, and, with a code book and look for every possible violation? Like, clearly, we don't have the resources to do that. So that's what the staff report was referring to.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That helps. That helps.
Commissioner Clark?
To pick up on that, I understand what you're saying about, not, having it at staff's discretion to just, decide, to go looking for violations and which ones of those to enforce. On the other hand, we do have members of staff that, know the code pretty well and would be in a position to recognize those violations. And I just wonder, just sort of thinking that through, if, a staff member, for instance, were to, see someone removing a street tree that they knew would require a permit, would they consider calling back to the office and say, hey, is there a permit for a removal at this address? And if not, would someone consider following up on that and on that information, that communication from a staff member, even though there was no member of the public that filed a complaint on it?
Frankly, I don't know. That's an interesting question. The next question that comes to me from that is, so we have a fairly limited set of violations that don't require a complaint. They are currently entirely related to safety, public health and safety issues. It's certainly within the purview of council to expand where we don't require a complaint, where we do expect staff to take notice if they observe something themselves. I guess, and as I'm saying that out loud, I'm just realizing it is, there are possibly 3 categories, right? There's ones where we only pursue if there's a complaint. There are ones that we pursue if we notice, and then there are ones that we actively go and look for, right? Which would the weed abatement would fall into that top category.
Okay.
And Commissioner Hopper?
Hey, thank you. I was hoping to provide 2 suggestions for input on page 13. And then I have 1 question as well. So 1B, review of complaints, number 3. That's where I think it would be helpful to have some sort of temporal scale there for the complainant that we were referencing earlier to have some sort of time frame.
Where are you again?
1B, review of complaints, Roman numeral 3.
On page 13.
Page 13, yeah.
Okay.
Where it says if no violation exists, and then it's talking about the complainant, where appropriate, complainants may be referred to law enforcement. I realize that if you are leaving it open-ended and, there's no time constraint on the investigation or the compliance, that you may not be able to be detailed with the complainant. But if there's a way to fit in their response, or maybe this isn't the spot, it seems like it might be the response, to put in something about the information the complainant will receive. And then the second one is down on 2, seeking compliance. a step one informal education. So we're at same page 13.
Mhm.
Under Roman numeral I, provide a copy of the ordinance. And by the way, I think informal education, this is great. It's like it makes sense. You're trying to get compliance and I had that experience recently on Bain Street where, chief of police was concerned about vegetation. I came down to trim it up. On the door, was the copy of the ordinance was provided. I mean, and it was just 3 sections of the copy of ordinance and no other information. And so my suggestion there is just maybe a note saying, I had insider info as to what to expect and what was there. And if I were just an average homeowner, I might just look at that and just be sort of like, what is this all about? 2 highlighted sections, 1 not highlighted. Made sense to me, but on the planning commission and having the other information, but it might just a note with it saying, any questions, call the city might help in that informal education process.
Absolutely. Thank
And
you.
then my final question on the same page is that goes back to the top on complaints. Number 1, complaints may be received number one, face to face. And I was hoping you might elaborate on that. What does that mean? Face to face, does face to face have to be a complaint or if somebody just complains offhandedly face to face?
Yeah. And I probably should have called more attention to this section because it's one that we've bandied about a little bit internally. I think there are some members of staff who believe that we really want to limit this to using the complaint form and just, if we receive complaints via these other methods to refer folks to the complaint form. There are others who made more of an analogy to a complaint to a police officer. You're not going to care particularly about how or in what context you received a complaint. But what I think what's intended by face-to-face here is, apparently the enforcement office, well, I think there are 2 cases. One is somebody walks into the office and states something. Another is staff members out, the code enforcement officer or a public works member is out in the community and somebody comes up and points out, a tree limb obstructing a stop sign or something like that. So that was what was intended.
And so is planning commission communications considered face to face, or that's one of the questions?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question, and I think we probably prefer. I would prefer. I think it's probably not the best use of the planning commission's time for staff to be fielding complaints or the rest of the planning commission's time, right, to be fielding complaints in that context. But I don't think we certainly under this policy, I don't think there'd be any reason to exclude those. Sorry, Chair, but I think it also relates back to the question that we need to track back with the city attorney about clarifying exactly what boundaries we need around those kind of communications.
Right.
It's been my experience as a property owner in Jacksonville and in Phoenix that in both cases I had a rental on the creek in Jacksonville and beside a stop sign on Rose Street in Phoenix. And every year, like clockwork, I would get a letter that said, get vegetation out of the creek and cut down the limbs in front of the stop sign. And it came to me at my home and, I'd go up there and do it. And they never, ever contacted my tenants because I was ultimately responsible for that property. And that became really clear a couple of years ago when everybody suddenly had hemp growing everywhere. And then the state informed property owners that that they are responsible for those hemp grows and solve that problem. You know, so I don't understand why we're messing around with phone calls and texting emails and this list of people, the responsible party, owner, occupant, operator, tenant, manager, the person ultimately responsible for what goes on any property is the property owner. And that's the person that needs to be directly contacted when there's a code enforcement issue. And so I think that all of this is inefficient, ineffective, and doesn't get the job done when it's the property owner that is responsible. And that's the person that should be directed the code enforcement information and all of it about what happens if you don't, because that was always part of what I thought. It's like, here's the ordinance, here's what happens if you don't do it, here's what it's going to cost you. I mean, it was just laid out there in both cases of those properties. And this doesn't make any sense to me that we'd be talking to people that aren't ultimately responsible, because they can just go, hey, maybe not, you know.
If I may, some code violations could be committed by the tenant. So, I mean, part of what we're talking about here,
I'm sorry.
by the tenant. So a violation of noise ordinance. I mean, there's,
Is that it is all code violations are ultimately the responsibility of the property owner, even if it's the tenant. I mean, if the tenant is, you know, like a crack dealer or something like that, it's still ultimately the responsibility. This is state law.
I'm not totally sure you're right about that,
Sure.
that if somebody does crack in your, that you could be arrested for drug dealing.
Arrested, but you're responsible. So
In some sense, right?
I think call the order here. I'm not really sure. I don't feel like we're getting sort of an argument about what is right or what is wrong. I hear
Thank you,
you sort
Chair.
of like to ask Alex, we could ask him to come back with a definitive.
Of course, and and I would like to just mention another situation that's not contradictory to what you're saying, but an explanation. So in many cases, we're dealing with the Anjou Club, or, you know, a business where talking to the manager, if you're seeking compliance, is a much shorter, more effective route to getting a hedge trimmed. So I don't know that it's always black and white, that it's in all cases that it's much better to talk to the property owner.
I guess I wanted to say, I'm wondering, because it's already 7:14. I'm wondering if it might make more sense for us to read this and send comments to Alex. So if the question he has time to sort of investigate, or whatever the word is, review it, and then come back with some answers to us. Because my understanding is that you're not asking us to, we don't have any authority to approve it. We're just here to help review it and give you some feedback, right?
Absolutely, and comments and suggestions are always welcome.
No, I understand that we have a paid position for code enforcement, but we're still on a budget crunch, so it's not like we have, if we can save money or do things more efficiently is a bad thing. And when I was looking at the direct abatement part, and like what Joyce said, it's like that letter that went to my friend, it's like she's charged of the property. They're the owners and they're responsible of taking care of the trees that are out of compliance. And that's where the letter went, was to the owner of the property, which makes sense to me. But first we have this formal notice from the city attorney. And then if that doesn't work, we have a notice from the city manager. And if that doesn't work, then we go somewhere else. And it just seems like it's a lot of steps and a lot of time. And it doesn't seem that efficient to me. It just seems like a lot of different steps to when things could be a little bit more direct and concise as far as the process to me.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate your suggestion. I do because the staff are seeking input from the commission. I'd like to, I mean, that's why I looked at the page and took my, so I appreciate being able to provide it tonight if possible. And I do want to say I appreciate the steps and I recognize that step one, informal education in seeking compliance is step one, and there are additional steps. Had the person in my home not responded to the slip on the door, the communication with me that came from the city definitely prompted me to act to trim back the trees and vegetation. And then I'm hoping that I can provide additional suggestions for on page 14 for the second page of the document, unless people are still wanting to make, I'll wait. If
Mr. Riley.
I think the rest of them.
Okay, we will take a break, 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Suggestion.
Okay, well, we will reconvene. Yes.
To the point that I think is a good point that Commissioner Shapiro and Riley are making about the responsible party. My suggestion would be to move the definition of responsible party down to step 2. I appreciate the intention here and the flexibility, and what I would say is probably the most efficient approach is step 1. And my guess is, when I look at code and compliance case statistics from June 1 to June 30, where 38 cases were created and 36 were closed in the course of a month, probably most of those happened in step 2 by being able to talk to maybe not the responsible party, but maybe the party that was, maybe what you meant by responsible party is the responsible party who maybe caused the violation. So I think what I'm trying to say is to clarify the definition of responsible party as the owner. And that's who you would be reaching out, I would imagine, to when you're talking about notice of abatements and things like that. That's the owner.
Yes, if you'd see sub 5, Roman numeral 5 under that.
Yeah,
So-
and just remove it from step 1 so it's not confusing. And so it allows you the opportunity to go to the renter who might let their weeds grow too long and would gladly mow them, knowing that you won't be getting a hold of the owner, kind of a thing. And that's probably where most of this gets solved. So maybe removing that so it removes the confusion, because it does seem to me that being able to reach out to either the owner, occupant, operator, tenant, manager as the first contact, or person responsible for the use, which is very clear, is the most efficient way to approach it. I would imagine most of the issues get resolved there, and then making it really clear that the rest of it is dealt directly with the owner, who is, I agree, the responsible party for property. And then I just want to apologize if I was unclear about the comment about resources. I just heard and conflated shorthanded and lack of resources, and they may not be the same thing. We're not shorthanded, but lack of resources, to your point, as well. Thank you.
And Commissioner Boulder was in the middle of the question.
Yeah, and that's fine. It was for the page 14, so the next page. So I'm glad that got addressed prior. I had a question on the protest part, on 3 protests to be considered. The cited party must file a protest with 10 days of receiving either the notice of abatement or final notice of abatement for direct abatement. And so is that a certified, or is that a face-to-face receipt, or how is that received is my question. How is receipt determined? The receipt date determined?
That's a good, good question.
And yeah,
I think it's ill-defined.
Is that it, Commissioner Boulder?
yeah, I've got more for page 15, but I'll wait
Okay.
until.
Commissioner Shapiro.
I just wanted to say something like, if most of our cases are resolved, it sounds like. So all I'm saying is like, I want to have an ordinance that has teeth for issues that don't get resolved, because it seems like most of the time people comply, and that's wonderful. But but when things don't go our way and people don't comply, I want to have an ordinance that does have timelines, it does have teeth to it, so we can have the correct ordinance to be able to resolve things in a timely manner without a lot of staff time. I mean, yes.
Commissioner Ryan.
So we have a requirement on our land use ordinances that they be clear and objective. Is that not true of our other ordinances?
Correct. That's specifically around housing and land use.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Shapiro's comment about once we get to that point where we've exhausted the generous approach, and we're at not getting any cooperation. Can you, I mean, I think that's worthy of a conversation. And so maybe we can start that conversation, because you're walking us through this with what you have believe is that point, and then allow the commission an opportunity, and myself, as ex officio, an opportunity to offer some feedback about that as well. So my question is, what is the teeth in this?
So typically, if we do a second notice of abatement, under city code, we're required to give 10 days. that was written before our mail was going to Portland. So we've adopted a practice of dating that notice five days after the date that it's mailed if we have to mail it. Because in effect, people would only get 5 days if we were mailing it. If somebody has made clear that they have no intent to comply and that they're not being responsive in any way, we can and at times would cite them. It's rare that people are that bluntly uncooperative. There's often some engagement and often there are all for those cases that would eventually reach a citation, they're often complicated. And so, but to answer your question, Mayor, and then if we do issue a courtesy notice, that courtesy notice typically has a 7-day deadline. I think what I'm resistant of is a policy that says that once we've issued a courtesy notice, if we do not have full compliance within 7 days, staff must cite that person. I think that puts us in an awkward position if there are, as I said, any number of reasons why we may not want to cite them yet. We may believe, as I was talking about with AN 81, that having the ability to threaten that citation is more valuable to us in seeking compliance than it is actually having issued it.
Can I ask you what a courtesy notice is?
Yes, so a courtesy notice isn't required by our code. And it's something our code officers have adopted, and they use it primarily in cases where they are seeing efforts to comply, but they're not sufficient to actually comply.
Mm.
And did you say that was in our code?
It's not required in our code. It's not.
It's not in.
Correct.
Stages to practice.
Correct.
So when we look at step 3 citation, it's sort of just, and I see that step 3.2.2, additional citation fines may be issued for continued violations where TMC provides for such. Is that sort of where you think the T, because it feels like it just kind of ends there. And there's not, I think what Commissioner Shapiro is saying is like, I mean, whether you put a date in it, you put a time frame in it, say, if the property owner is unresponsive or they're not complying, this can happen. You know, or whatever. I feel like that's like is that what?
Yeah,
I just,
I do too.
whether you put in a time frame or not, it doesn't say ultimately what can happen to you or what is the consequences if you do not do anything. And maybe I missed that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I saw the letter from the city of Medford, they had something in there like, this is the timeline. And if you don't comply, then we have to take care of it and you will have to pay for it at whatever it cost us and the administrative fees to get it resolved. And it's pretty direct and it's not like all these, you know.
Okay.
So,
your gold card.
Well, I think that is simply an oversight in the policy because that seems super. That's an oversight in the policy. There's an example of first notice of abatement attached to this. And
Which number?
on page 23 and that well, the second page of it on page 24 is notifies them that the city, can issue fines and take direct action, direct abatement. The cost of direct abatement would be assessed to them.
This is just for weeds, correct?
No, well, this happens to be one that's used for weed abatement, but this is sort of the standard form. Looking at this, I think, adding some additional language about the amount of the fine or the number of fines might be helpful, and maybe should be higher up. The concerns I've heard from council in the past is, well, I shouldn't say concerns. One of the few times I've discussed this topic with council, one council member expressed concern that this letter was overly threatening. But I think this may be on the other side.
Well, I mean, I can see where they're coming from. That seems overly friendly. But, and again, I mean, there was somewhere in here, and I can't remember where I read it, is that if it, at some point, you could actually put a lien on your property.
Yes.
That there is something in there that says, if at this point, a lien can be put on it. I mean, and that would sound like it's right if they put in that letter, but it can't be, these are things that can happen if you don't follow, and they see that it is kind of a serious thing. We might have a better response from those people. I
think people that are gonna take care of it are gonna take care of it, and the people that aren't, that's when we need to have the ability to put a lien on their property, which is how they have it in Medford, and, this is, you don't take care of it, we're gonna take care of it for you.
We should do it.
I think that's it's in 4G.
What page?
Page 15.
Page 15, pardon me.
Right,
Yeah, there it is.
right.
Yeah, it is. Sorry. can you-
After 30 days of.
I was just gonna say that it would also make sense if an hourly rate for the city to take care of it was included in this.
Well, it all depends if they have to, excuse me. Because if the city can't do it and they have to like contract it out, there's variables, I would think, so.
I think,
And they get cost plus.
so let me, I wanna try and honor what you're saying, so. Let me clarify what I'm saying is if I were to receive a statement like this, because I was not in compliance. And I knew that it was gonna cost me $75 an hour, regardless of. Whatever it was, weeds or whatever. I would choose the highest dollar amount. That it would cost, that the city would charge somebody to do that, that would certainly light a fire under me to get a hold of somebody and. If nothing else, say, I can't afford this and I can't afford to do the work. That allows us to provide some kind of maybe referral to somebody that would be willing to do the work. That's all. Does that clarify?
Yep. Commissioner, Ryan.
I remember in the past, way back sometime, the fire department was involved in this process, and they did have a rate. If they were the ones that sent out the people that know. And there was a fee, and there was a known rate or fee. But I guess the fire department is no longer involved in the debate.
Public work.
But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's an option to add it to the letter. But I can see how that city council person will think that letter is friendly. And not that it shouldn't be friendly, I think that there is always sort of that balance where you can say, we want to work with you. And we'll do everything we can to work with you, but if we can't, these are the things that can happen. Commissioner.
Well, I want to say this is a friendly letter, but as somebody that once received years ago, the unfriendly one that threatens $500 a day, I assure you, that will get the attention, but that comes later in the process. I'm assuming, which it's built into here. It seems like
Mhm.
that's the notice of direct abatement, I assume. But that definitely seems effective. I'll say it kept me up at night, for at least a night.
Sure.
And then I was gonna follow up with, well, I'll come back to it, to page 15.
I want to point out in the memo for this, for the agenda report, that it does start off on the first bullet point, is that about limited financial resources, and that's why there is not a reasonable expectation of code compliance.
100%.
Yeah, so,
It was in the
Well-
staff report, that one, like,
yeah, so that, you know, that's, but, you know, if there were penalties, and then, okay, if there were penalties, it could pay for code compliance. It seems like that should be how it works. But to get penalties, it has to go through the justice court.
Correct. I think if we were submitting hundreds of citations to the justice court, they would be even less likely to enforce them.
you're right.
So the city would be paying for the court time. Is that right? Would be paying.
I'm actually not sure exactly how that is structured financially. We will
But you're right.
happy to find out.
Sometime in the past, we did have a series of municipal judges and we had a court that met once a week, and, you know, people had to come in there and pay their driving violations, and I'm sure that was a paid position, but maybe that's something that we could look into, because in the long run, if us paying for a municipal judge was balanced out by the income we got to support code enforcement, it might work out for us better than whatever we're doing down there. Because, you know, especially if the justice court isn't interested in enforcing our codes. If, like you say, they're not into it, you know, for whatever reason. So maybe the city council would like to look at that.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, Commissioner Hazel has something.
So I just have a thought, and I think I know the answer is no, but is there any way that could be added to, say, a utility bill? That might be challenging, especially if the owner of the property isn't the one in violation. But it just, like, if we had to do weed abatement and pay for that, I'm wondering if there's any way that we can get that added to the utility bill, even if it has to go through city council.
We can certainly investigate.
I mean, it seems like fair.
Does it have to be adjudicated first? I think.
Yeah. Well, but you have, if you follow your direct abatement policy, you have to follow that, this,
Yes,
right? If you're doing the work, the city is doing the work, then we have to follow this policies. And it doesn't say anything here about, you know, this is where it says, if they don't pay you that for doing the work, then it's.
and that is based on ordinance, but we can investigate if there's flexibility to add other options in the ordinance.
Right, Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. On page 15, a couple questions, suggestions. Direct abatement, number 4B, formal notice from city attorney. Down on line 5, where it's not coming into compliance is received forthwith. They will be provided at least 5 business days. I misread that. That's 5 business days from receipt of the notice from the attorney? Is that right?
Yes, I think that's the intent.
And so
Yeah.
the same question as before with how the notice from the city attorney is reaching the person to start that clock? That's one question. The second one is in the same paragraph, the last line, the city attorney, city manager, et cetera, may waive notice from the city attorney if the matter is urgent. And does that go to the safety stuff that was discussed prior? I just wanted to know how urgent was defined.
Yeah, I think it's by those folks who are referenced there, right?
Yeah.
And I think a health and safety matter that has an imminent threat to it certainly would qualify, but I think if there was, if there was a chronic recurrence where I think there are other situations beyond health and safety where you might want to move, there might be an urgency. We wanted to leave it open.
Undefined. And then my final question is how was the 20% overhead charge determined?
So it's a flat calculation on whatever
I mean, how was 20% the determined amount?
that's in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to me, maybe, I don't know, this is just a thought, like the formal notice seems would come from the code enforcement officer. And then the final notice would maybe the city I'm just wondering why the city attorney's first, then the city manager. It seems like the city attorney would be like the final letter. And what couldn't the can the letter come from the code enforcement officer and then it would go to.
So step B is entirely not required by our code. So yes, it could come from the enforcement officer and
I would just say money and like follow, you
Yeah.
know.
Yes. So clear, this is an extremely unusual circumstance. And the thought behind this was you might get somebody's attention who hasn't really been paying attention and thinking, though, code enforcement officer, what are they going to do? So that was the thought behind it, but it certainly could, there's no requirement that step take place and certainly no requirement to be from the city attorney. I believe the step C under the ordinance does have to be from the city manager.
From step C has to be from
The city manager, I believe, but
I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of steps here and
there are, yeah, absolutely. And the reason for that is we want to provide numerous off ramps to compliance. That's the
but I think
intent.
that if we've gotten this far. I know.
We're just talking tonight about policy, staff policy, right? Not about the ordinance. That's correct. And so, is this discussion going to go upstream to the city council?
That's what my understanding was. Here, because we asked for it, right? We asked to see what there'd be a policy.
And sent down from above.
And I confirmed with city council that they'd be very interested in understanding your opinions and thoughts before they took it up.
Yeah, they asked for your feedback. So will it be a public hearing or will it just be an item agenda for discussion?
If we were talking about the ordinance, the answer would be different. But if we're just talking about a policy, there wouldn't be certainly no requirement that it be a public hearing. Could also add, I personally, regardless of the the topic. If there are concerns or thoughts about the ordinance that you all have, it may not be the best use of your all time, but I'd certainly appreciate notes and emails. I keep lists of things that we need to clean up in ordinances when we get to them. So.
Yeah, I just want to say, I appreciate the intent and all the steps and compliance as the nadir, makes total sense to me. As a standard operating procedure, I learned what SOP means when I first read it. It's like, oh, what's SOP? And then I found out. But I do think this could probably, I don't know, I almost feel like even though you're allowing for multiple steps for compliance, it seems like it could maybe come in a simpler, like I kept thinking, is there a way to put this into a table or something, or some sort of form or some sort of broken down, truncated steps where somebody can just look at it and say, but if not, reading it, it certainly makes sense, along with some of those details that I think are important to iron out, but yeah, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I appreciate that this the commission raising this issue and staff bringing this before us, and just to sort of speak a little bit to the need. I know that in our code it describes that fines issued for violations of the tree code will go into a tree fund to support tree planting and care for the city. And to my knowledge, since my participation started in 2018 or 19, to my knowledge, there's never been any money in the tree fund. I'm not aware of any fines being issued, and that's not because there haven't been any violations. And some of them have been egregious and not complicated or unclear. And also, just to say that the situations are different in weed abatement. In that situation, it doesn't take long to for a bunch of guys in a chainsaw to take down a tree, and you can't send them a letter that says you have to put it back together. And so, I hope we see appropriate enforcement of those violations when they occur, and appreciate the clarity laid out in this, and I look forward to the more feedback follow up on that in the next meeting.
I would say from my experience and the work I've done, this kind of policy is very important, step by step by step, and even though it might be long, because when you're the person having to enforce something, you don't have something like this that really is a good guide for you. It's really hard. So I appreciate actually a little bit more than a little less, but even with a lot of policies I've written, I do sort of have a one-page cheat sheet that does help make it sort of like consolidated. So for the average person, they can look at it quickly, but for the person who has to enforce it, I need this guidance to help me do the best I can when I get a complaint, or if it's an investigation, whatever I've done. So I would say that both sides, I appreciate the actual detail, but I also think if there's any way to put it in a one-pager to help the public, that would be.
Right.
Mayor?
I have one more suggestion, I think just one more. On page 12, where it says policy investigation and possible code environment A, B, C, and D. What occurred to me when we were first talking about this was that there are probably incidences where if a staff noticed some sort of code violation happening during a construction project or something that would be hard to undo and or hard to mitigate or very expensive to mitigate. I feel like there should be an E there where there is some flexibility for the staff member to be able to go and say, if you put that on the building, it's going to cost you a lot of money to have to take it back off. And And why that, two reasons why that's important. One, I think it is in keeping with the spirit of trying to work well with our constituents and our residents and stakeholders. But the other thing is that when that doesn't happen, and when it is noticed, we have to live with it. That's what happens, is that we end up living with it. There's porches and crazy stuff around town.
Homes. There's entire homes that were set on a foundation that were.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, and so I just feel like if it's some sort of big, like obvious thing that could be super expensive to undo, or just leave us with a choice, oh yeah. Leave us with the choice of not being able to do anything about it at all. Maybe there's a provision that could allow the staff to say, that's gonna be a big mistake. I don't know what that wording would be, but.
Sure. Well, and I appreciate the suggestion. I think it's a good one. And I don't think there's nothing that prevents us from taking that action today, right? That we can inform people that they are not following code, even if we're not in the course of enforcing it. But I think it would be helpful to have
I
that
do
clarity.
see that in your use of language of primarily complaint driven, but because you created a list, it may be useful to put it on there.
Absolutely.
I would say-
For the reasons that you,
Right, exactly. And when
Yeah.
it's in writing and someone seems like that condition wasn't there. Yeah, I've had so many of those gotcha moments. Right. Sorry, Commissioner Gable has.
So, yeah, thank you, Mayor. That was a good case in point for what I was trying to say earlier was, or at least maybe a better example, that there could be times where somebody might be annoyed by something or wonder if it's okay, but not, think, well, I'm not going to complain. These things happen. They're doing it. It must be okay, especially if it's construction. And so there won't be a complaint from a citizen. And that's a really good example of that where a city employee who's in the know would be able to say that they're not following code. And absolutely, once it's done, it's done. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I guess I want to just start these comments, just noting the fact that, out of 38 complaints, he's closed 35. Where my question sort of goes is there a written set of instructions for your code officer as to how to assess and determine how to approach these, or is it just sort of something that he's learned on the fly and he's learned from the person who came before him? I guess my question is, we've been talking about trying to be efficient about this because of the lack of resources. Is there anything specific in terms of how he determines who to reach out to about specific problems with the property and things like that? Sorry, micromanager at work, I'll be a micromanager here.
So there are a couple things. One is, yes, primarily, the current code enforcement officer has been trained by somebody in PD who previously served as code enforcement, a non-sworn member of the PD clerical staff. We do not have a tremendous amount written down in terms of SOP. I'm sure that would be great to capture some of that knowledge more typically. I mean, they passed on in terms of some suggestions of when somebody's elderly and can't afford to get their bushes trimmed, who the nonprofit you might want to refer them to. So there has been a fair amount of sort of informal information passed on that would be good to capture. Is that the kind of thing that you're wondering about?
Exactly, and as he's trying to assess a problem, I always look to flow charts for my staff because it's really easy. Here's the problem, here's who you're looking to. That kind of thing but again, I mean, I'm looking at a pretty high rate of success. It's just the occasional sticker.
I just have to say, in 1 month's time, we have a 95% closure rate here, and I want to, at some point in time, also give some kudos about this work as well. I mean, that's pretty successful, that's pretty efficient in 30 days. Although, I do acknowledge why we're here, and it's those two.
But it's good to know sort of like how big the problem is. And it's not as big as we think it is, it's just like, I don't think personnel problems, like 20% of the people cause 80% of the problems, and you think it's everybody when it's really 1%. But it takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your effort. And so you want to make sure you have policies in place so that when you get that 1%, you could, definitely.
And if I may add just one more, and if those flow charts and things are in place, when there's turnover, you have an easier way and there's not a big buildup to try and makes your training easier. That's it.
Absolutely.
Why not see any more here? So, Alex, next step, then we will make some changes.
Yes, certainly. I think the most important thing to come back with is the clarification from the city attorney about, what's appropriate for discussion and what context and what kind of information is to be shared. I think the second thing that I took from tonight is I think you all, in addition to a number of obvious fixes that you all pointed out, I think you pointed out a number of places where we could queue up questions for council, because I think, we've heard even from this body, right, some different opinions about some topics. So I think my plan would be to come back with, another draft that's sort of framed up in the way that we would expect to share it with council, where we're focusing council on some questions that we think are the key policy questions for them to consider.
I just want to add that as liaison, I would probably make most of the focus of those questions around, like, as Commissioner Shapiro described, as the teeth of the policy. My takeaway from this conversation as your representative to council is that the negotiation and seeking compliance is in keeping with the values of the city of Talent. But at the point that we have difficult enforcement, we want to see something that gives us all more assurance that things are going to get wrapped up. And so I just want to reiterate that that's what I'll echo at the council level.
Thank you. Okay. Shall we move on to the next topic? Go down with it? Okay. Housing planning, it's me. Housing Planning Assistance Grant Advisory Committee of Cooking.
Hey, there. Yeah. So as we all know, we are undergoing the housing planning. Housing planning and assistant grant, thanks to DOCD. It is, as with most grants with consultants,
it's moving kind of slow, but slow and steady. Is when the right figure. Anywho, so I guess the reason I brought this before you all is we are asking for one of you all to join our advisory committee as a planning commission representative. We're expecting to meet 3 to 4 times, with 3 of those times outlined in the schedule. You'll see on page 52 and 53. I'm sorry, 55 and 56. At any rate, this is with this committee, you will hopefully join a city councilor and a handful of citizen advisories from different fields. For example, we're hoping to get one from historic district, hopefully somebody from more of a housing related centered work. And then as we put together and the consultant put together this project, there's times where we will put this project in front of that committee and for their advice.
Okay, Commissioner Volker?
Hey, thanks, Rick. I've got a question for you, because I was trying to understand, I mean, obviously, when I see advisory committee, I'm like, okay, who are the advisory to? And obviously it says to assist the staff and the consultant team. To refine proposals for planning commission review and possible adoption by city council. Up above, it says support code audit work to improve development code language, as well as the urban growth boundary land exchange. But then when I look back on 58, on Green Top's document, on what the committee will do, it says it will review the code audit findings and the code concepts that come out of them and help set priorities. It says it will help shape the draft and final code amendments so they're clear, objective, and effective. Does that mean that the advisory committee, I mean, the committee's doing this before it comes to the planning commission then? Is that, do I understand that right?
Right.
Okay, so all the priorities and final code amendments and suggestions come to the committee, so that they're really staff, I mean, they're shaped by the advisory committee, but staff is setting the priorities and shaping these code amendments, the final code amendments, and then bringing them to the planning commission.
Pretty much, I mean, it's really going to be shaped by staff
consultants.
consultants.
Yeah,
And staff, and then ran by the citizen advisory committee for their input prior to coming to planning commission and ultimately city council.
And so whatever's ruled out, final code amendments or concepts is gone, the planning commission won't be able to get in on that then. I mean, from my reading of it here. Am I misunderstanding? Does that sound? I'm just trying to understand what my. Yeah,
So if I
it's
understand-
strange to me that there's not that we don't have a committee advising the planning commission with the consultant involved. That's why I'm trying to understand it. That's all.
So if I understand
It's a requirement of the grant.
for the citizen advisory committee,
That the advisory committee be advisory to the consultant and not to the planning commission.
That's correct.
All right, thanks. Yeah.
and I kind of think I might have seen one of your red flags, and I wanted to kind of speak to that real quick. So
Okay. Cool.
if there is something huge in the work of the consultants and staff, because the advisory committee says this needs to be pulled out, that doesn't not necessarily mean it's just going to be pulled out. So what is of importance to staff and consultants, what regardless of going through the advisory committee, if the advisory committee says no, that doesn't mean anything to us. That does not necessarily guarantee that it will be removed and not get in front of you guys.
We just have to catch it at updates. It's important for the commission to catch those things at updates. And the person that's on the advisory committee to be informing us as a commission.
Right,
what's
so
going on. Yeah.
did I see your red flag right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I just, I mean, when I see, improved development code language, I know that means that they're going to be looking to try to add residential to our commercial. And I won't be for that, and across the board probably, so, and I just want to make sure that that's not getting. Well, I mean, if it's getting jammed down our throat, I have a chance at the planning commission level to speak out against it, but, yeah, just trying to watch for things that, you won't get to weigh in on if you're not on the committee, so. Thank you.
Mayor.
I just want to add some clarifying points. I think what's really clear is that the advisory committee is going to do what all of our CACs have done in the past, which is develop the draft to come to the planning commission to be reworked or worked, and then to the council for final adoption. So I'm not sure what the concern is.
Well, this sounded a little specific.
And I actually, I want to retract that because I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that the planning commission will actually get a bite at the apple. I mean, there is a point at which those discussions can be had. And I guess what perked my attention was the ramming it down our throats comment, because the very fact that it's here before this planning commission for your expertise and your input would hardly rise to that description.
Well, and I'll just say there's been multiple efforts by the LCD to get us to adopt that. So that's what I mean. Repeated efforts, maybe jamming down the throat. It's a little too vivid.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, if it doesn't get past you, I think that alone would.
Right.
If it doesn't get past the planning commission, I should say, that alone would.
Eventually,
Nothing but jam.
eventually Sale felt us to do it.
But to the larger point, that is one reason why having somebody from the planning commission
Yeah.
to be able to speak on, to be able to speak to their expertise is so important.
Thanks.
So we would have any interest, more interested than, and Commissioner Hazel, I just want to make sure you are included in this if you are interested.
I'd be interested if nobody else wanted to be, if it's limited.
I think we're looking for one person, is it? Or just one person? Okay.
And there is, a proposed motion on page 51.
Okay,
That's
well, I want to see if there's other people interested.
I'm looking at Riley because she had concerns about the consultant. So.
I had concerns about all consultants.
Well, yeah.
I just wish I'd known I could do one. But I think so. I'm looking for where the meeting. I know I saw it earlier when I was reading.
It's on
that,
page
but
55.
That's what it says for the meetings on it.
Thank you. Yeah.
The meetings are start to the bottom 5, and then also you have 2 meetings, topics.
But for the advisory committee, those aren't set.
Right, that would be the AC, so,
The 18th.
No, September 30th would be the first one.
And then when?
December, really? December 30th?
Sorry, it was September 30th.
Oh,
September 30th. And then January 27th. And then March.
10.
Those are 3 meetings. I thought they said 4 meetings. Those are the 3 that are set.
3 or 4, 3 on the book, 4, a 4th if needed. And Commissioner Riley, you're looking for the letters AC on there.
AC number 2. Yeah, she got it. She got it.
Which page? I'm sorry. I thought you said
56. And you're looking for where it says meeting/location, AC number 1, number 2, and number 3.
okay, thank you.
Well, if Commissioner Hazel is interested in, she can make the meetings. I don't know if they're day or evening, but if she can make them,
I don't see, well, I don't want to see anything, but usually they do in the evening. a couple that I participated in were always in the evening.
Oh, because the CAC meetings for the feasibility were always in
No
the
daytime.
daytime, the early afternoon, but. They-
Does it say,
You know, they work business hours,
Okay.
volunteer hours.
Sorry, Commissioner Hazel, what were you saying?
does it say what time these are?
That's what we were just discussing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It does not say what time, but I am a strong advocate for if we're gonna ask people to join us in meetings, we need to make it when it's available for them. So I would not assume that it's in the daytime. I would assume that as a staffer, I would push for an evening time so that
Mhm.
work jobs can also can attend as well.
If Commissioner Hazel wants to do it, I could be like her alternate if something came up and she couldn't.
Yeah, I'd have to verify my schedule with the calendar, but yeah, that would work well. Commissioner Riley?
Can I just,
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's gonna be the structure that we can count on. Like, it might be that there's all the committee members and then there's an alternate. So if that were the case, Commissioner Riley, would you be interested in just being an alternate?
That's what I said.
In case anybody's absent?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay. So expressing interest from Commissioner Riley being an alternate for anybody. Because that might be, that's more likely gonna be the structure, that there's an alternate member, not alternate members, each member.
I'll be the rights when you say.
Need a motion.
I was about to, I just was.
Yeah, joking.
So, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion? It's on page 51.
Yeah.
It's a proposed motion, although yeah. Nothing. Commissioner Shapiro, are you ready to make a
am.
motion?
I move we select Commissioner Hazel to participate on the Housing Planning Assistant Grant as a representative of the Planning Commission. I move we select Planning Commissioner Joy Riley as an alternate on the Housing Planning Assistance Grant.
Mayor?
No,
Yeah, I'm not sure that
we
the
need,
CAC is gonna have an alternate
Oh.
yet. And I have no reason to think one way or the other about that. I'm
Oh.
just saying, we probably should verify that that's gonna be the case. If it is, as your representative, I'll make sure that
okay.
an argument is, a case is made for Commissioner Revis.
So would you like to restate that?
Yes. Okay, I move we select Commissioner Hazel to participate in the Housing Planning Assistance Grant as a representative of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Vogler?
Yeah, Commissioner Hazel, if you discover that your schedule doesn't allow for it, will you report back to the commission?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll just take yes, we will need a roll call. I answered my own question.
Are you ready for roll call, Chair?
Yeah,
All right.
we're ready.
Commissioner Hazel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Volkart,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Shapiro,
Yes,
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Chair D'Amato.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Mayor?
Rick, would you mind chasing that question about the alternate and that this body only is appointing one person, but if it comes before us to appoint somebody, I want that question asked if that can counsel them. Like I said, I'll do that.
For both council and commission.
Yeah, well, no, because these guys are appointing just a planning commissioner.
Right, but.
But if for an alternate, if we bring it to council, I'll be case for.
so
I just need to know if the CAC is gonna have an alternate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're on to the electronic code cleanup bill. We'll give Rick a second to finish it.
Thank you, Chair. This one is really short. Wanted to use SharePoint as our point of, so we use a website for all of our documents, but they're static. And one of the points of this was to have a sheet as we go through the process that could be updated more often.
than the static sheets I put on, the PDFs I put on the website. SharePoint was gonna be the go-to. Unfortunately, our IT has SharePoint locked down and I'm not able to create my own SharePoint. And that we're in the process of doing that at the moment. One of the stipulations I'm giving our IT for the creation of the SharePoint, which I think that they're kind of, I understand. I do understand, but I don't. Okay, so one of the points is to avoid public meeting law issues. Whatever SharePoint is, there it can be no communications of whatsoever. And when I relay that to IT, they're like, well, it's gonna take us a minute. So that's where we're at. IT is working on it. Hopefully we have a place where I have this Excel sheet uploaded and I can work on it as need be. You all can view it as need be and it be a living, moving document rather than one that is static and you have to pull down from the website every single time.
And it would be view only for us. We couldn't edit it. You would only have editing rights. So it is safe and secure, but we can see the like real time what's happening.
Yes, that's that. Yep, that is correct. And you wouldn't be able to comment, like, do any clue of your thoughts or opinions. You just be able to view, and I'm pushing for the ability to download as well. And IT was, yeah, I'm pushing for you guys to be able to download because if we're using a SharePoint, we might as well put all of our planning commission documents on there for y'all at any point as just a centralized location, secondary website.
Did I say again? Commissioner Bocco?
Yeah, and so you're looking for a recommendation on, you're not looking for a recommendation.
You just,
correct?
this is just an update.
Yeah, just.
Because at the last meeting, I said I would have it for you and I'm coming back and telling you why I don't have it
Right,
for you.
yeah, okay, I thought we, okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, Commissioner Riley.
No, I will for the next.
Oh, you're ready to the next, okay. So move on to our propositions and remarks from the commission. Commissioner Riley.
So we have an ordinance about, is it historical trees or monument trees or
Heritage.
heritage trees? And I think we don't have a way to implement it or how. But anyway, that's right. I got that. Right. So we can, but is that part of the code update, the whole urban tree thing? And
Rick has asked the committee for recommendations for edits to the tree code, recommended edits, red line copy, and we have some work ahead of us to do that. It's some work that we started quite some time ago, and just kind of need to pick up where we left off, and so that'll be forthcoming recommendation from the Urban Forestry Committee, hopefully in a couple of months. And to your point about heritage trees, it's defined two ways in the code, and one is a diameter measurement for different for deciduous and coniferous trees. The other is a statement about the heritage public trees can be recommended for heritage status, and that by any member of the community and brought to council for approval or something like that. And that's kind of very ambiguous. And we've talked, it's come up a lot, and how would we deal with that, and where would this list be kept, and how would it be item,
but it's only on public land.
And that's the other thing. It says public, that part of addressing heritage trees, it refers to public trees specifically, which is not really, why couldn't a private tree be a heritage tree for the community as well? So that's something that we'll probably have the chance to be wrestling with. Yeah.
Okay, because I think it should be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you definitely answered that better than I could have as our local subject matter expert.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so a heritage tree would have any would it have any protections?
I don't know that there's any specific protections. Again, there's that ambiguity in the code about about heritage tree being defined in two ways. So if a tree was nominated, to be a heritage tree, but it didn't meet that size classification, but it was nominated as heritage for some other reason, I don't believe there's currently any protective.
Is that in the land use? Is that in the 18 or 17 or is that?
I think it's in.
It's an 18.
In 18, yeah.
18? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to apologize to the commission for a cavalier comment I made a couple of meetings ago about the historical district. I have some pretty strong feelings about the heavy hand that it has on commercial mostly. But I don't feel as strongly. I do think it needs some revision. I do think it needs some modernization, but I don't feel very strongly about the housing pieces I do about the commercial. In any case, the cavalier comment that I made was I think it should go away, and I don't think that. So that was just off the cuff and probably a little just thoughtless is what it was. So my apologies if I raised the ire of many of you who actually worked on it. And I want to just close by saying that I've had many conversations with our staff about code enforcement. And one of the things that I often say is that I appreciate the commission's attention to code because they're the ones who wrote it for the most part. Title 18 is in large part a product of this many of you sitting here, and that I understand the pride that they take in it, and their concern is rooted in real lived experience, and I feel the same way about the historic district. So if I said anything that was offensive, that's what I'm apologizing for.
Gave me a heart attack.
What's that?
You gave me a heart attack.
Did I? I'm so sorry.
I got that.
It really wasn't that, but I am pretty frustrated by the commercial piece. It's really causing a lot of trouble, and I do look forward to us all talking about it together and me being able to share the experiences I'm having out there on the commercial piece. Yeah.
And I do believe we're gonna have a meeting about that historic, right? Aren't we gonna, didn't we say last meeting we're gonna have a special meeting?
We're waiting to see where they intersect with the housing production now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so
grant.
we will get,
Yeah.
Commissioner Bopart.
I just want to say I stake no claim to ownership on the Old Town historic district language. So I am not responsible for that at all. Totally clear enough, but you read it, you'll understand. You don't want to stake a claim to it, right? That's all.
Okay, and I don't think we have any assignment of representation to this account. With that, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.